So it said that earlier, I thought, but I don't know why it stopped. Did everybody hear that? Recording is stopped, recording in progress? No? All right, anyway, when Pat does this, what she likes to do is be able to control the way the paint soaks in. And so if you don't allow the paint to soak in except once it's ready to go in after the lacquer, then what happens is you start painting and the paint does not soak into the wood at all. And you have to be aware of that, because now you've got to figure out, okay, I'll let it go and it's not soaking in. What do I do? Well, basically you've put an overcoat on it and you've got to let that dry somehow, some way, and then add another color or add another coat. Because that way you get to control light, dark, and medium what you want on your carving. So here's the bear. Here's his pants. Sorry, I'm upside down. There's his pants. Those facets are starting to come out. And we've got his pants. So what she'll do, she'll take a gloss like this. Deft Wood Touch-Up Repair Restoration Gloss Lacquer Spray. Light coat, then you sand it with a piece of Scotch-Brite. Scotch-Brite looks like this. And then you start adding layers and layers of paint, and you put the darker paint up under the coat, like I would put darker paint under here or in here in the elbows, or up under the coat right here in the front. I'd make that the darker and then lighter as you go away from that. Okay, hairspray again. I want to make this dry off, and that'll give me a chance to dry the shoes as well. So about 10 seconds. Okay. So now the bear is dry. Okay, so I didn't say that, so let me go over that. I did not talk about what I do when I'm done carving. One of the first things I do is take a brush, a very stiff brush. This is a grout cleaning brush from the kitchen aisle. A real stiff brush, and I run that over the whole thing. Just looking to see if I had anything that I'm still working on. Here's a Santa Claus I'm working on, one of my rough outs that I made. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this brush, and I'm going to brush fairly vigorously. What I want to do with this is it gets off all the dirt, any sand particles I've done in there, any metal from rasps or my knife or whatever, and I'm going to do this all over the whole thing. And it's going to take me, 10 minutes, and I'm going to get really tired after 10 minutes of doing this. But this allows my wood to get ready for the next step. So I'm just cleaning off underneath everything, getting fuzzies out of there, getting stuff off my glove, everything I can. Excuse me. Once I'm done with that, I take this bristle pads, and I take 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, and I mount them in a mandrel. A mandrel is a shaft for a rotary tool that has a screw at the end of it. So I poke a hole through those pads, put the screw through, screw it on the mandrel, put it in my Dremel. I got a Dremel 4000, which runs at about 2500 RPMs, and I run this thing over the whole carving. So all of these marks that I made, all the fuzzies that I can get to, and I do it with 3. Sometimes I'll do it with only 2 so that I can get down in between the legs, but not very often. This is what prepares my wood, because let me get on not my soapbox, but get on my preacher's pulpit. Sandpaper is one of those things, and here's a piece of foam back sandpaper that's really good for that because it's very flexible. Sandpaper is one of those things that can easily ruin a carving, and it can easily get too much for you to do. So sandpaper, the roughest sandpaper I've ever seen is 60 grit, which means there's 60 pieces of grit every square inch. I've seen sandpaper as smooth as 12,000, and I'm sure there's even more. The question is, what are you doing? Are you doing a cowboy? Are you doing a Santa? Are you doing a bear? Are you doing a Celtic knot? that determines what you're going to do, because it determines where you start. Do I want to start with 60? 60 is a pretty aggressive grit, which means it's going to take off a lot of stuff. But as much stuff as it's taken off, it's also leaving behind. And so what's happening is when you sand it, those sand particles have to go somewhere. Now, yes, some of them will fall off, but some of them get embedded in your carving. And so you've got to have some way of getting those off. And people say one way is to blow it off with computer air or an air compressor or whatever. I don't like doing that, because that, if I've got a lot of sand on there and I'm blowing it with air, it's just pushing that sand across the wood and it's scratching it. And so if you start at 60, you've got a pretty aggressive set of grooves in there. And then again, so it's the big question: where do you start? Where do you end? Do I stop at 150? Do I stop at 400? Do I stop at 1,000? I don't know, and it depends on the carving you're doing. But for me, sanding has its limited use. I do it on some things a lot. I did a class a couple weekends ago at Woodcraft, and it was February 14th, so it wasn't weekend, it was a Wednesday. So last week, sorry. And so what we did was two connected hearts. And you imagine two connected hearts where one's laying over top of the other. Great carving, great project. Everybody finished, and then they took the sandpaper and they sanded it really well, which meant it took paint really well, because they had gotten to the point where it was ready for paint. What you're doing with this Scotch-Brite is a lot like what you're doing with another piece of wood. If I take the carving and I grab just a scrap piece of wood, and I go on the carving, I'm going to move my paint well here for a second. Bear with me. And I want to take that carving, and here's the arm. I'm looking at the arm right here. It's got my cut marks in there. It's got a little bit flayed wood. If I were to take a piece of wood that's the same hardness as that wood, and I rub it, I'm doing what's called burnishing. So I'm just taking that piece of wood and I'm massaging the wood back into place. Because when I cut it, what I'm doing is I am removing the wood from places where I want to remove them. So if I'm carving, I want to remove the wood from that arm right there. If I take a piece of this wood and I burnish it, that's burnish, B-U-R-N-I-S-H, what I'm doing is I'm smoothing it down. And so those cells that got opened up when I cut them, they opened up like this. I'm going to massage them back in place. And that prevents it from soaking up a lot of paint. And it also will kind of remove some of the roughness of it too. Now, okay, you and I know we could sit here and piddle, play, and putter all day long. We could certainly make this thing as smooth as a baby's bottom if we did that. I don't want to do that because I've got other ways of doing that work a lot better and a lot quicker. And so I use primarily the Scotch-Brite pads on a mandrel, and I spin them at about, 1,000, 1,500. I don't, the number's worn off on the indicator, so I don't know. But that makes it so much smoother in terms of still leaving the facets, but massaging the wood back in place so that I can paint it and it doesn't soak up all that paint forever. Because what I don't want is the top of that head to be as dark as it could be. So you see now the color on this head, we've painted it and it's had time to soak in. So it's a little less blotchy than it was when I first painted it. Because now the wood is starting to then soak that paint in and get it where it needs to go. All right, I'm gonna get off my soapbox on sandpaper. I like sandpaper, it has its place. Just be cautious about what the result of the sandpaper is. If you want it to be scratchy and rough and things like that, then use sandpaper, or if you don't want that, use more sandpaper that's higher grit, higher number. Okay, I'm gonna mark off the bear because he's already painted brown. I'm gonna mark off the pants, they're painted gray. I did the shoes, they're brown. I'm gonna do that buckle. The buckle is really, there's not much to it. And so when I paint, I just go right straight out of the well. I'm not going to try to put it in my paint well. I'm going to open up the lid, and this is Craft Smart. This is the one sold by, I think, by Michaels, and this is metallics. This is nickel. That's what it says. Okay, I want to get a tiny little brush because I do not need to have this stuff scattered all over the place. It's metallic, which means it has little metal flakes in it. And those metal flakes have a tendency to travel. They like to be on the move. So I'm going to dip in here to my paint water, and I'm going to just get a little bit of paint on the end of the brush. I don't need much. I'm then going to twirl it on my paper because I want it to come to a point. So twirling that makes it a point. And that point allows me to get right in here and paint that buckle right here. One stroke, another stroke, another stroke, and another stroke. I'm going to take a little bit more, dip it again, and do it one more time, because after that first pass, brush tends to get flattened out. So now that it's primed, knows where it's supposed to go, it's right there on that buckle. Okay. We'll mark that one off. We know we're done with that one. And we're going to do the belt, which is black. And because this is the only black that I have in this painting, the only black that I need, then I'm not gonna need a whole lot. And so we're gonna get the black. We're gonna do just like we did. I use a soft black. I love this soft black, and I've used it for years for a lot of things. They just recently changed the mix, and now it comes out a little purplish, and I hate it. I have gone everywhere I can think of to see if I could find the old ones, but when they're wrapped up in plastic, you can't really tell. So you're just kind of buying a pig in a poke, as we say in the South. So anyway, I'm going to do the same thing. A little bit of water, dip it in there, and I want to get it out here on my palette here. Twirl that to where I make it small. It's pointed, and I want to see if I can do this without getting black paint everywhere. Because on these little stuff, it's easy to either miss a spot or get paint where you don't want it. The good thing is when we go back over it, we add the dry brushing, it'll take care of some of that. So some of the blotchiness of the thing will look a little more clear and a little more straightened out, but it has a tendency, now it's dried out already on me. So let's get it a little bit watered down, get a little bit more in there because it's drying out, which means it's skipping. Okay, do the other side, dry it out, get her in there. Okay, his belt is painted. Looks pretty dark, and it is. When we go back over it and dry brush it, it'll add a little bit of facets to it, so it'll hide a little bit of that. One of the little details that a lot of people do is either carve in the sole or color it in. Well, this, I don't need much. I'm going to get a different brush. I need a more pointed one. This, come on, further. It's a good thing to take your brush and wash it before you use it. Get water on it. This one, oh, that's worthless. I'll throw that one away. Life is too short to use bad brushes. Okay, I've got brown or black. I want to add a little bit of brown. Yep, sweet black chocolate. And I'm going to use it right here on this palette that I'm using. So I've got black. This is an almost black chocolate. And so when I add a little bit of water to it, I can stretch that out, and you can see that it gets a little browner. You probably won't, not showing up very well. But I want to color the sole. I got too much paint on that ferrule. A lot of times when you go to paint, this ferrule right here, which is what holds the brushes together, will hold water. And if you're painting and you don't want to get water running down the brush, make sure you've got that little bit of paint off of there. I'm just going to follow along the bottom of the shoe and around the edges so it looks like there's a sole there. It doesn't need to be much, it just needs to be on there. All I'm doing is providing a contrast between the bottom of the shoe and what's called the sole and the upper. I keep hearing outside, my neighbor must be trimming a tree or something, but I keep hearing bzzz, and it sounds like my phone is vibrating. It's not, but every time it does that, I got to look over at my phone. It's like, I need to tell my neighbors, listen, when I'm working, y'all leave me alone. Y'all quit making noise. Like that would go over real well. Sorry, I'm off camera. I didn't mean to do that. I'm just coloring, painting the sole of the shoe. Don't forget this little part back in here. And just to make sure you're not going to have trouble later, I'm going to take, getting in these little corners, and then I'm going to take one of my earlier brushes, use that, and I'm just going to paint the bottom. I want to paint the bottom of that shoe. See how brown it is now? I want to color that because I think around the edges of the shoe it would have looked goofy if we had that edge and it was showing light and dark at the same spot. Alrighty then. I think we got it where we needed to go. Alright, hair dryer for about 10 seconds. Hold on. Painted the belt, but I forgot that little part on the inside, so we'll take a little bit of here. We can reuse paint here because it's not going to make a difference. There you go. All right, what we're left with is the jacket, the shirt, the tie, and the finish. So I said light green on the shirt, and I didn't decide well on the tie, but I said cream on the jacket, and I'm beginning to rethink that. I want to go with more of a sand color. So I'm going to grab, I'm going to look for, I don't know if I'm going to grab, I got to find it before I can grab it. I want to grab it over here and get, where are you at? Desert sand. Let's get a little bit of desert sand. So the desert sand has a tendency to be yellow sometimes, so you got to be careful what you mix it with and what you put it next to. That's one of the things we've got to watch as an artist, is what we put colors next to, because we don't want contrasting colors unless that's the particular look you're looking for, but we don't want things to make it so that you can't see what you're doing. In other words, you want to go this direction, but this thing is not allowing you to do that. Okay, I've got desert sand. Hang on a second, I'm gonna wipe this off. Okay, I got desert sand and it looks kind of yellow. So I'm gonna take a light brown, like this honey brown. Nope, that's not the one. Raw sienna. I want to put a little bit of this raw sienna, just a tad of it. So I need about that much paint on there. I'm going to put water in that well so that the raw sienna will mix with it. And you see that color now. You see that color with just this little bit of brown in it. Not sure if it showed more of a cream. It looks more of a cream on the camera, but it's going to look like this when we do it. See that color there? Light's not real good. Let me see if I can get a little light on the subject. Does that help? Okay. I am actually going to add a little bit more just to tone it down, because it's kind of bright and that wasn't what I was looking for. I'm trying to make it a little brown tannish kind of thing. Think of suede. I don't have suede in here. I'm going to have to rethink what I'm doing. Anyway, this is where we're at. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do on my jacket. Rinse my brushes. A lot of people talk about buying the best brush you can buy, and so you go buy brushes that are $12 each. I don't know about you, but I'm a little frugal, and when it comes to brushes, I don't mind using cheap brushes 10 times and then throwing them away. It's just the way it is, and it's part of the thing you're going to do. You're using supplies. I'm not sure why people gripe about, well, I don't want to buy anymore. Well, you got to buy things, and I realize if you buy paintbrushes that last you 10 years, that's up to you. I I don't know. To each his own, I guess, for whatever you're doing. I like mine to be, let me use them, and when I throw them away, if I haven't spent a lot of money on them, I'm less liable to keep them when they're worn out. Because brushes, I don't care how much you spend on brushes, they're gonna wear out. They're getting used. They're, especially when you're painting on wood. If I'm doing watercolor, yeah, I've got my watercolor paints and brushes in another part of the room here. And I've got brushes that I bought when I first started, when I took my first watercolor painting class from a guy named Giancolo, I think what I want to say, but I don't remember. Anyway, he was an art teacher at Boise State, and I took a class from him, and I still have some of those because he insisted that you buy good stuff, and it makes sense. But I don't have those kind of brushes on in my well here because I'm painting on wood, and wood has a tendency to destroy the fibers. It'll chew those up to where they're flayed out like a plucked chicken. And I don't really want to use that. So if I paid $3 for it or $8 for 4, I can toss them in the garbage and say, hey, no big deal. Done with it, moving on, let's get done. Good lighting is important just as well as good brushes, just as well as good paint. But don't break the bank buying stuff that you need. I know a lot of people, what's that saying I saw the other day? If you don't want to get rich, take up crafts and art, because you'll be spending all your money on supplies. And I couldn't tell you how many people I hear that when I do a show or I teach a class or whatever, they're like, yeah, I don't want to carve. I can't have another hobby. Okay, what do you do with the ones you got? Because if they're sitting in there drawing dust, or your paints are getting hard, or your brushes are getting worn out by non-use, then what do you have it for? All right, another soapbox I got on. I'll shut up. Probably not. Anyway, I'm still painting this jacket, and I'm making it look like, it's almost like a, I don't know, evening jacket maybe. I apologize that I keep getting off the camera. It's hard to carve and paint and do this and stay in the camera. So I put an X so I know where I'm supposed to be, and I'm there about 10% of the time. So anyway, so having said that, I don't spend a lot of money on paintbrushes because I can go to the store and buy a couple of them and catch them on sale. If you get on their flyer, you get $5 off here and $10 off there, and pretty soon by the time you get $10 off and $10 off, that's some serious money. All right, so we got his jacket. I think we got him looking pretty snazzy. Oops, turn him back upside down. Okay, I like that jacket. And in fact, I am going to take this real tiny brush I got over here, real tiny brush I had over here, and this will work. All right, he's carrying a book under his arm, and I want to get this color just to tie it in. I want to paint the edges of these pages. So I'm going to run this down. The cover I'm not. Got a little thing in there. I'm just going to color the edges of these pages because I want them to look, he's carrying an old book, reshelving the book. All right, since we painted so much right there, I'm going to hit the hairdryer for just about 15 seconds, so watch the sound. Okay. It's looking pretty. I am going to do one thing, and that's raise the arm of this camera up a little bit more so you can see more of the picture. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't look at the chat a lot. Let me see what you're saying. I apologize. I'll take a minute to address that because now we're into it about an hour and 5 minutes. Chat. Here we go. Chat. Talked about thinning the linseed oil. You can paint also for canvas paints. I use a different set of paints for canvas paints. I use a thicker student kind of stuff. I don't use this stuff because it's watered down and it's watery. I just use a different student grade for that. What do I do to prepare for paint by cleaning if you do that? I think I said something about that. I use my Dremel and I use my the scuff pads, and that gets it ready. And then when I'm done, I don't put sealer on there in terms of spray, whatever. You have to hang a sign recording in progress. Well, yeah, maybe I have to do that, but I still don't think that. Next door is college kids, and next door is a couple that their grandparents, and they have their grandkids over all the time. And in the summer it gets worse because they just put a pool in the back, so the kids are screaming and yelling out there. So for carvings it's okay, but when you paint art you need to have a decent brush. That's true, and that's why I have decent brushes in my watercolor and acrylic stuff. But this is craft stuff, and I'm painting on wood, and so it'll kill you. Hobby Lobby has a 10-pack assorted brushes for about $10. Yep, I saw those the other day, and I almost picked some up, but my wife says if you get rid of some, if you get more, you got to get rid of some. Let me show you why she says that. If you buy more, you got to get rid of some. So there's a whole lot of them in there that I bought, and they look brand new because I haven't used them. Thanks for validating what my wife said. I'll have to let her know she's right, according to my folks. I am looking at the chat now, so I'll try to pay more attention to that. I just get carried away with doing what I'm doing, knowing we've only got 2 hours, and sometimes we need 2 hours and 10 minutes. So for those of you that are just joining us, I'm usually here a half hour before with the video starts. So I start the meeting at 1. I'm here at 12:30. The meeting ends at 3, and I'm usually here till 3:30 unless I have to go somewhere or I have something else I'm pressing. So just so you know that, even if I don't address your chat, hang around, and I will address the chats when I get a good chance. All right, any other chatting before we go back to where we were doing? Because we're an hour and 10 minutes. Okay, so this guy is looking pretty good. Now, I see spots where it looks like I missed a little paint every once in a while, and I'll go back and I'll touch those up before I spray it with the final look. We got a tie, we got a shirt. I forgot to write down we got a book as well. So you got a brown jacket. Let me take a minute to touch up a little bit because that's bothering me. The one on the back, a little bit there, and right here, I missed that whole bottom of that jacket right there. Good lighting is important. I got a whole lot of lights running in here right now, just trying to get the best lighting I can. Started with 2, went to 1, now we're up to 3. Okay. All right, I said a light green tie. So let's find an ugly green tie. Does that look like it'd be a good tie for him to wear with a cream jacket? He's making a statement, I know that. Sorry, Dave, I didn't mean to ignore the chat. I'll try to pay attention to that. I usually close it out so I can see the whole page. And when you close it out, there's everything on the side goes away, the memberships and the chat and all that stuff. So I try to pay attention, and sometimes I forget. Apologies. I'm getting better. There's some of my earlier videos where I had a little X right here, and I carved all. You could just see my fingers in the corner of the screen. Okay, I'm gonna give him a green shirt. Here's where a good pointed, sharp, well-maintained brush comes in handy, because you're getting in here and you're carving, you're painting right down here, right up here, and right down here, and it's easy to splash that paint everywhere. I use really, really tiny brushes for the eyes when I get to them, and I'll show you them. But here's what I talk about. This thing here isn't very big, as you can see by my knuckles, but it really comes to a tapered point when I'm doing it. So it looks like this. See how that's more of a taper than it was? Okay. Carefully, here's where the carefully part comes in. But also understand that you can go back and paint over it. You can scrape it off if you need to. If it's really bad, you can take your knife and carve it off. And there's a lot of things you can do to get there. So don't fret if you splash paint in a place where you didn't meant it to be. There are a lot of ways to get that out of there, and one of the ways is to plan carefully. So if I was not planning very carefully, I would have put a color on the shirt that I could not have taken off this once I got it painted, because depending on some colors, they soak in farther, and so you may be taking off more than you really wanted to when it comes to scraping or cutting anything off. That's kind of wacky looking, but you know, this is what this is supposed to be. It's a wacky looking Librarian. You know, there's other ways of doing this. When you're painting your paintbrush, when you dip it into the well, it's full of paint. It's charged with paint. And so what you don't want to do at the very beginning when you do that is to touch it to some place where it could bleed, because osmosis will pull all of that paint out of that brush into a place where you don't really want it to be. And so it's just a matter of knowing what I should paint first with a full loaded paintbrush, and what I can put off until later, or can I paint the inside? Let's say I'm doing right here where the tail, the collar, the tab of his collar is. If I painted the middle of that, it takes some of the paint off, and that allows the paint to flow a little easier once I get to the outside where I'm going to touch some other piece of paint. Alrighty. Any concerns or complaints or comments or questions so far? Paint dark colors first, then my light colors. That's true. It does. One of the other ways to do that is if you wanted to do that wood burning, is if you take a light wood burning about a number 2 or number 3. I have the type of Super Pro 2 that has 2 settings. It's got a heavy and a light one, light duty. So if you wood burn between areas where where paint could flow, that's one way of doing it too. I've never tried airbrushing. It looks fascinating to me, and it looks like so much technique driven, and I've never tried airbrushing. Okay, I did once when I was working with my boys in scouting. They did their Pinewood derbies, and I worked in a automotive paint store at the time. I was assistant manager of a store, and we had these little bottles that you could put a sprayer right on the top of it. It was a charged can sprayer, like a underarm, whatever. That worked perfectly for airbrushing, and their Pinewood derbies didn't look so good because they didn't really, take the meticulousness that I did. But we found that in scouting there was a lot of adults that were doing the painting for them. And so what we did was they instituted an adult race. So adult race they can make whatever carving they want, whatever car they want, whatever paint they want, and then we'd race the adults. They had to pay $5 to race, but that kept a lot of dads from touching their kids' car and let the kids have fun with their own car. So it's the only time I've ever done dry brushing. I'm getting to the point where I do a little. Peter says I have trouble painting it because I suffer with tremors. I know a lot of people that have given over the painting to someone else simply because they love carving and don't want to give it up. And so they give the painting to somebody that they know that can paint a little better than they do. All right, that's all the comments there are. So I'm going to go back to painting. I left off one thing I didn't say. I said I need to paint, but I didn't put in my list, and that's the cover of the book. So we'll get there in a few minutes. I still haven't decided what color I want to tie, so let's go ahead and do the book. I'm going to take the gray, tie it in a little bit more, and I'm just going to paint the cover of this book right here. So I want to make sure, let's see if I go right up to it. Will it run? No, we're good. Okay. So I'm just using a little bit of paint, trying not to go over the edge into those pages, but go right up to the edge so it looks like a cover of a book. Another detail you could add in here is put a title in there of something, whatever you feel like you want to highlight. You know, if this is a bear that his or her spouse does knitting, could be, you know, the title of it could be Knitting 101 or whatever you want to put on there. Anyway, there's the book cover. Looks like it's run off. It's actually just a shadow right there, so it's not running into something. Tie, the moment of truth. This is when you get to look at your well and see what you've got in here as far as colors and how wacky do you really want to get. Lime green, I think would look with a really yellow tie, and then we'll put some polka dots on them, just to do something stupid. So only need a little juice out of there. Is that all the paint I need? A little bit of water. I don't want it really runny because I don't want it running much. Shake it up there a little bit. Take most of it off of there because if you put too much on there, it'll run off into that other color. So I'm just going to get that right in there. A little bit more. See, that thing was charged with paint, so I went down the middle of it rather than the edge of it. Now I can come back here and touch this corner and that corner and this edge here. Does he look goofy with that color combination? I kind of tend, when I dress up, which is very rarely, kind of tend to stick with the same colors. There's colors I like and colors I don't. Colors I like that I don't look good in, and so I stick to the same blue, brown, and black kind of when I've got to do that. All right. We're going to let me dry everything real quick. So give me 20 seconds. I didn't count that time, so I don't know. All right, I want to take a dark red. No, that's going to look goofy, isn't it? It's all right. Fits my personality. I usually use stylus for this. All my styluses are in another box because I'm doing a chip carving class this week, and so the students need to learn how to transfer the pattern to the paper. So I've got all my styluses over there, and I try not to get too regimented when I add a detail like this. I do not want it to look like it's too goofy of a pattern. I'm just going to randomly put a bunch of them in here using the end of my brush because that works just as well as a stylus. It's just a little bit bigger. Feel free to add some smaller ones in between just to be a little funky. And I think that ought to be enough. Too much and it would throw off the... Now, since that's raw paint without dipping, watering, or whatever, it takes longer to dry, so I've got to hit it with a hairdryer, because if I leave it wet, I know I'm going to touch it. So here we go. All right, eyes and nose. These are the last couple things we're going to work on. Nose on a bear is usually black, so I'm going to use this soft black that I've got. And I don't need it to be watered down much, so I'm going to take the top off, dip a little water into my little brush, get it wet with paint, and just put that out here in the middle. And I am going to mix it with a little brown because it's a really stark color against this face. So I'm going to use a little bit of this brown here. And see if that gives it. Yeah, there we go. See how that'll look a whole lot better against that nose? For those of you watching, subscribe to my channel. That way you'll get an idea of what I'm going to be doing over the next little bit. Eric Owens Carving on YouTube. Eric Owens Carver on Instagram. Subscribe, it helps. I think I made $9 in the last 28 days off of YouTube channels, but you know, that'll buy maybe a good brush that I might need down the road. So I don't think I'm ever going to make a lot of money off of this because I doubt that 100,000 people ever tune in to listen to me talk. But anyway, all right. If you've ever looked at bear eyes, they have a brown, almost raw sienna, burnt sienna color in the back behind them. Raw umber, that's what I was looking for. They have raw umber color to their behind them. Their iris, and then the pupil is dark. And so I'm going to take raw umber, and I don't need much, so I'm just going to scoop a little bit out on my brush, put it in the well, and I want that watered down just a little bit. So I'm going to take a little bit of that brown, a little bit more, and mix it in with it. And that looks like it gives me the color I'm looking for. That's going to be the back of the eyeball, the whole color of the eyeball, and then we're going to put a black pupil in there. So the iris, I think, is the outside, the back colored part, and then the pupil is the middle part. So we'll get that out of the way, make some room, and we're just going to color the whole eye that color that we just mixed up. Need some more water, otherwise it won't flow. This is where your hands will get to shaking, Peter, because you're concentrating really hard on doing something, and it's important that it stays within the confines of where you need it. And I've had times when my hands wouldn't do what I wanted them to. Okay, so I got a brown back in there, and I need a black. Did I put away the black? Nope. Yep, I did. Raw umber black. There we go. Eyes are difficult, admittedly. Make sure everything's dry before you go from one thing to the other. So I want the iris to be completely dry. And then I'm going to paint about half of that black. So I'm going to go straight into the black, and I want to color a eye in there. Can't really see it very well. I'll try to hold it still so it'll focus. I'm holding my breath, it ain't working. Looks like I colored the whole eye, didn't. It's only part of it. All right. And then to finish that off, you know what? Sometimes what I like to do as well is just a few real small dots, like hair. So it's better if you do that in not a pure black. So I'm just going to give a few little things that looks like bear hair. Not much. I did that in that mixed in color that I put in there earlier. So take some of it off of there. Just random. I don't want them to look like they're all in rows. Okay. I then want a little highlight in his eye. So I'm going to take white. Sometimes I use buttermilk depending on what it is. But for this, I just want to use a warm white. Trust me, it says warm white there even if it's blurry. Okay. Dip right in there. Again, I don't have my stylus, so I'm going to use a little bitty brush. I'm going to lick that, and no, I shouldn't lick it. I'm going to just dip it in that white. I just got a little tiny thing of white, and I want to do it in the upper right-hand corner. I don't always do it in the upper right-hand corner, but mostly I do them in the upper corner.
Out of focus.
I'm out the camera too. Sorry. All right, you'll see what I'm doing right there. I just want a little bitty white there and a little bitty white right there just as a highlight. Not all highlights should be white, or round, but that usually is what focuses better. I can't hold still long enough to get the camera to focus. I just bought this new camera, and when I show just the camera looking straight at me, it's a really good picture. But anyway, it doesn't always focus the way I want it to. Okay, you know what? Other than being dry brushed, I think he's done. Let me dry it, and then we'll finish it up by dry brushing. All right. Dry brushing is one of those things that can easily be overdone. And by dry brushing, what I'm doing is I'm taking a brush, usually one that has a lot of hair, and a lot of people say use a stiff one. I don't use a stiff one. I use a smooth one. A makeup brush works perfectly. I want to make sure they're all spread out. I want to make sure that they're clean. I want to make sure that they're not going to fall out. And then I just want to drag them across. So if the grain runs this way and the facet
Eric,
runs, yeah.
Did you put the sound lower?
Put the what?
Your sound lower.
I
It's
can't.
not as hard as before.
I still don't understand what you're asking, Peter. I'm sorry.
I think it's all right now.
Okay. It's all right. I'm going to move on. Anyway, I'm going to take this brush, and ordinarily I would use a color called buttermilk. It's kind of a yellow, but it's just a dull color. Sometimes I don't use I don't use the buttermilk. I use something that I obviously can't find. It's called desert sand. Anyway, depends on the background color, depends on the color you want, because you don't want this to stand out and be very, very, very obvious. You just want it to make marks. You want it to pick up the ends of the highlights. So I'm going to show you right here. Let's see if I can get a little closer on that. On his pants, you see all those facets, and you see the wrinkles in his cuff. What I want to do, and I'll start right there because that's a better way to where you can see it, because it's not going to show up much on the yellow, and it's not going to show up as much on the brown as it does on the darker. So I'm going to dip this brush in here, and I want enough on the end so that it's got paint, and then I'm going to take about 90% of that stuff off. Dig it in, brush it off, twirl it, whatever you got to do to get it out of there, because what I want to do is have almost nothing there, because you can't see anything on the paper there, can you? But when I go across his pants, watch what happens. So that facet, that brush, and that dry brush is picking up those facets. You see them better now? That's the look I'm looking for, the whole carving. I'm going to do that on every part of the carving. And usually I start in a place where it's less obvious, and that's on the jacket, especially with this color. And a little bit of this paint will go a long way. You don't need to load it up as if you're trying to paint a big Bob Ross tree. You're just got enough that when you go across the grain, it gets picked up. Okay, I didn't get the rest of the pants. So I hope the camera's picking that up so you can see it. Maybe I'm moving around too much so it's staying blurry. Do it all across the shoes. A lot of times this will help hide a few things. So if you got a few stray marks, you don't feel like carving them off, you can cover them up with a little bit of dry brush and it just looks exactly like it's supposed to. Now here's where you'll probably see it the most, is on the head. Okay. And if it gets too bright, like that spot right there, you can always rub it off. Try to keep it off the eyes. You don't want the eyes looking like they got a lot of streaks on them. And then do the shirt. The shirt is where you want the least amount on it. So after I've done everything else, I'm going to do the shirt. I talked about the belt showing up with facets on it. And then any other little places where you think it might need it, or if it needs to come off, you can wet this brush and wash them off. And so I just travel all over the carving, everywhere I'm going, so that everything looks like it's not brand new right off the shelf. It's got a little bit of dust to it. Kids have played with it a little bit, and it is exactly where you want to be. So this is what we ended up with. We've got a little bear painted, wearing his professional dress, clothing, and I'm throwing it at the computer. So I am done with this project. I've got a lot of these bears and I've got to figure out what to do with them all. So I will call this one done and we'll move on to the next project. Any questions?
Is different.
I'm
Eric,
sorry? Yes.
the color is different with this camera than the other camera.
Between this camera and the other camera?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a computer camera. It's probably a more clear picture than, let me switch real quickly to the overhead camera.
Yeah, this is more beautiful.
Yeah, it's a better lighting situation, I think, this way. And this camera right here is, yeah,
Higher resolution.
I think so. I'd spent, well, as you know, I've gone through several cameras since we started back in November or September, October, whatever it was. And I like this camera. I spent a lot of money on it. I like the camera, and I think it's doing better. And as long as there's not a lot of movement, it stays focused. And as long as there's not different levels, like the hand will be focused and the bear won't. So anyway, any questions, anything I didn't cover that I could cover for you that I didn't explain? We got about 20 minutes left, something like that. Did you do
Are you
last
gonna?
week's? I did.
Are you go?
I did do the brushing on the bookshelf. There's a little bit. It's not much because I didn't want it to look overly done because I would have lost a lot of details if I'd have done that. Go ahead, Robert.
Are you gonna keep us posted about upcoming?
The next project we're going to do is this one right here, and this is just a generic one. Let me switch cameras to the. Oh, this one's better. You said this one was better. We're going to do a cowboy bottle stopper. This is just one of many I have, but we're going to do just a cowboy bottle stopper. I figured, that would be, because down the road I'd like to do a cowboy class, and that will be a start to it. If you can do this, then you can do the rest of the cowboy. Some of these are done by my friend Monty Dick. He died a few years back. He and I loved doing cowboys together. And some of these are some of the ones that Chris Hammock used to sell. Chris Hammock used to do a lot of resin bottle stoppers, and so here's one of them. It's a firefighter, or sorry, not a firefighter, it's a fishing captain. And here's one of his cowboys. If you know how Chris carves, it's very, very sharp and angular. So you don't have a lot of smoothness. Even the nose has a lot of movement to it. So that's what we're going to do. I'll put out, today's the 21st, next week's the 28th. The week after that is, I don't know what the day is, but that's the day we'll do. I'll put out the pattern. You'll need to get, if you want to make a bottle stopper out of it, you'll need to get some of these. These come with the dowel in them, and so if you don't want to do it that way, leave the neck long, and you can insert it into a body and make a full cowboy out of it. That's the next project. I'll put that pattern up here soon, and you can get started on cutting it out. It's a little bit hard. Well, okay, I don't want to say it's a little bit hard. Give me just a second, and I'll find the pattern. Maybe not.
Looks good to me.
What's that?
Looks
I
good to
find
me.
the pattern, but now there it is. There it is. So this is the pattern really that we're going to start with. Although the neck will be a little bit longer. We'll have something like that. And then if you want to be ambitious, you'd cut out one, but you also cut out the sides. So if you see, this one is a block out of a 2x2. It's 2 inches by 2 inches, and then about 3 inches long this way from here to here. This one's the same size. It's just had the sides cut off. So you can see the difference where the sides are cut off. It's just a matter of making less wood for you to take off. So that's what we're going to do. The pattern I'll give you with the neck will be a little bit longer. And that way, if you don't want it to be a bottle stopper, you can make it as the head of a carving you can stick into the body itself. Used to be able to buy these, and they were about $20. And it came with 3 of them. And I recently saw who used to do them. He's done them now. There's 2 for $25. So you can get these head sticks already from Gerald Sears, GNB Sears Wood Carving. And so if you want to practice heads, this is the way to do it. Now I have this last one left, and then I got several of them that are separate. But that's basically what we're going to be doing. If you want to be ambitious, these are about 3 to 4 inches tall. Take a 2 by 12, so 2 inches wide, 2 inches thick, and 12 inches tall, and make a whole bunch of them. And I tell you what, when you're carving a head, you have a tendency to lose it in your hand. That's a lot to hang on to. So you could carve it right here and carve. You got a whole handle down here to hang on to. But that's what we're doing next. This cowboy bottle stopper. It'll look like the ones I showed you. I showed you this one because it's probably the best one. I only have one of these left. I've given away, sold, birthday present, whatever. This isn't mine. I found this in an antique store in Redmond, Washington, and I like it. I love those ears. I like the hat. But anyway, this is what we're going to be doing. So know that you can follow along with me and do this carving the same way I do it, or you can be ambitious when we do that and do your own version. So I anticipate 2 meetings, maybe even 3 on this. My issue I'm having lately is I'm having to go back to work more than I wanted to. And so I'm doing a lot of substitute teaching, and I get called every day, and sometimes 5-6 times a day, because there aren't that many science and math subs. They're just generic subs that will sub anywhere. And so I'm one of the few in the district that are trained in math and science that I can go in and I can teach straight from whatever they've got. So if they're doing Punnett squares for biology, or they're doing weather fronts, I know what they're talking about. Dave, yes, I did. That's out of 2 by 2 by 12. So let me grab that. 2 inches, roughly, might be a little bit more than 2. 2 inches wide. Sorry, I'm not showing it to you. About 2 inches wide here. It shows up to be, yeah, about 2, maybe 2.5. Roughly 2 by, I'm having a hard time keeping it on there. Roughly about 2.5 inches. I'm looking at this backwards, so it's hard for me to see it. And then about 12 inches tall. You can order these from Gerald Sears, like I said, and that way you get 2 of them. And he used to do a thing where if you ordered those, he would carve the face on one of them leave it on the stick. He would carve that on there for an extra 25 or 30 or whatever it was. I don't know the price. You can contact them. They're still old school. If you order from them, you got to call them or email them. They'll send them to you, and then she sends you a paper handwritten receipt. Barbara does, and I think it's just I love it. We've ordered several of them from them, and now I'll be doing a class here in Boise, doing one of Gerald's cowboys. I don't know where it's at. It's somewhere here. Anyway, we're going to do that in our club here. Everybody decided they wanted to order the same cowboy, and then everybody do the same blank, same cowboy. And they can do it any way they want, but that's going to be one of our upcoming classes here in our local area through our club. So that's the next project, is doing this face. And some of these, I said I didn't have one. There's one of my old ones. This was 2011, so you can see how far I've come. It's pretty flat face, but it's not bad. It's not one of my favorites. It's real kind of flat and blocky, but it's a cowboy. Grunting old guy. Anyway, we'll call this one done in terms of the bear and everything else, and we'll move on to the next project. Still haven't decided if I'm going to go to a subscription model, if and when, and so I'm practicing on you guys, so I appreciate y'all playing along with me and letting me practice and having a little fun and going along with it and pointing out what I need to do, like stay on the screen and focus on all that.
If I can help, let me know.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Peter. But I appreciate all your advice and whatever you're helping with me. So the 1st of March, first Wednesday in March is, pulling up my calendar, March.
3.
February, March, the first Wednesday in March, I say the first Wednesday, is the 6th. I have a dentist appointment that day. I'll have to change that. So 6th of March, 20th of March. 20th of March I can't do. I've got a meeting that night. So let's do the 6th, the 13th, and the wait a minute, this is IEW, what's the time? 5:30. Never mind, I can do it on the 6th and the 20th. March 6th, March 20th. Everybody got that?
Yep.
Will we use the same codes?
Yes. So when you form a Zoom account, they give everybody their own code. So that's my code for doing my meeting. It'll always be on that 973-320-5136 with a passcode 1145556. That's the same one. So bookmark it or whatever you need to do, write it down somewhere. It'll be that same code. And so we'll be doing the 6th and the 20th next month. March 6th, March 20th. Got it?
Okay.
That'll have to change when you start subscription.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm thinking about doing 2 subscription models a month, one for people who can do it during the day and one for people who can only do it during the evening. The problem is the more I push it back in the evening, the more it impacts people that are overseas like Peter or people on the East Coast. Because if I do it at 5 o'clock my time, it's 7 o'clock their time. They're sitting down to eat or having their 3rd drink or whatever they're doing. I don't know. But I'd love to be able to please everybody and find a time and a date that works for everybody, but I can't. So I've got to go with what I can. And if I'm going to have to do a lot more substitute teaching, then they go until about 2:30, 3 o'clock our time, which means by the time I get home, it's 4. And then we got 4 to 6 Mountain Time, which is 6 to 8 Eastern. I don't know yet. Obviously, we don't substitute teach in the summer, and I don't want to go full time and be a teacher, but I can slip in there and make a few dollars a day and help. Like I said, we remodeled part of our house, and I want to pay that off as quickly as I can because it came out of our savings. So part of it came out of our savings, part of it came out of our home equity loan. I don't want to be 80 years old still paying that thing. I want it paid off as quickly as I can, and everything that I make through the school district goes straight into that payment account. So quicker I can do that, the more I get to free myself up, and I can act like a retired person again instead of having to have a job. So phooey on that. I will certainly let you know, and it's going to depend on a lot of things. My wife is nearing retirement. She'll be 65 in July. So if she goes on retirement, she's got both our insurance, and so then I'll have to do something a little bit differently for insurance because I'm only 62. So anyway, not to tell you my life story, and then you probably don't care one bit, but just so you know, if it impacts you, the reason it's doing it. It's not just because I'm tired of this time. It's because there's a real reason for making changes. So we'll do what we can. I'll let you know plenty ahead of time, and we'll somehow make it work. So, but I appreciate you being here, riding along with us, and asking questions and teaching me a thing or two.
I appreciate you doing it also.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All
All right, I'll hang around. Sorry, go ahead.
You have a board with different carvings on it that in different stadia.
Like from beginning to end, you're saying?
Yeah, you had different boards.
Yes. Here's one of them idea. This is not my idea. This is from I want to say his name is David Green. He's written a couple of books, but he's got a lot of relief carvings, and so I just took those relief carvings. So this is where you start at the beginning. Where's my hand at? You start at the beginning.
Yeah.
So cut it out, and you move to step number 2 and step number 3.
I like those too.
Step 5 and step 6. So I've got several of these, one for a feather, one for a gnome, one for Santa. And I'm in the process of doing more of these because when I do a class, if I can show them where to start and where to end, even if I put
some pictures.
Because a lot of carvers, a lot of new people, I'll put a finished one laying in front of them. They'll have theirs, and then I have one that I'm working on in front of them, and that seems to not be enough. Because you're circling a room of 10 people, and even if you only spent 3 minutes, that's 30 minutes before I get back to person number 1 when I get to person number 10. So I'm trying to do these kind of things where they're visuals. They can see what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. And that way they don't have to wait on me to come back around 30 minutes later. They can see what they've got to do next. So I'm in the process of doing.
Pictures.
Sorry?
could you send me some pictures?
I could use pictures. The problem with a picture, it's 2D and this is 3D. So you can turn it and see what angle it is, how far it is, because the picture may not be full size. So if this carving is 8 inches tall by 6 inches wide, that's a big photo that costs a lot of money to print all those photos. So, and again, they're looking at it 2D, which really doesn't lend itself to being able to see it in 3D. And that's one of the things I've noticed in my art teaching career is that there's a lot of people that have a real problem going from 2D to 3D. They can see it, they can draw it, but can they translate that to a carving in the round? That's not the easiest thing to do by any shake at all. So, yeah, good idea to show them pictures, and I do that. And when I do classes here, I give them a whole set of instructions. But still, there are a lot of people that still need their hand held because they're not artists. They'll tell you, I'm not an artist. I can't draw a straight line and that kind of stuff. And so being able to get them to have the confidence and the ability to go from that step to this step, it's crucial to build confidence. And if they're doing it and they're not confident in what they're doing, they're probably not going to do it for very long. Because as you and I know, when we're not good at something and don't see ourselves getting any better, it's a little hard to continue on in that strain of thought. Because you're like, well, I can't do this. I'll give up. I'll go do something that's a little bit easier, surgery or whatever. So anyway,
Makes more money.
yeah, a whole lot more than I'll ever make in my lifetime. So, any questions? Comments? All righty
That's
then.
all the day.
Thank you. Had fun. I enjoyed doing this project. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
I need to start putting my carvings on Etsy or something and get rid of them. They're piling up. I carve fairly fast and they're piling up.
Every after the football, and he left. He sent the tough one where allowed his players to Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
Bye, Eric.
See you, Peter. Enjoy your time.
Eric, are you going to
Yeah.
put a pattern in your email? Is that what you said
This pattern is on my website.
for the cowboy stopper?
The cowboy, I'll put it in. It'll go on my website, and I'll send it out on Facebook and YouTube. Not
Right.
YouTube. Sorry, not YouTube. On can't remember one thing. On I'll put it on Facebook and an email, and then it'll be on my website.
Thank you.
You betcha.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.